reason that I'm here with you all today is because throughout my life, people believe. From a college seminar on social toxicity, I remember writing a paper on how I wasn't expected to have a seat in that university auditorium, based on environmental factors that would have labeled me as at risk. My parents both came to this country undocumented. I was born when my mother was 16, and she went on to give life to 3 other boys. Neither of my parents studied beyond middle school, and we lived significantly below the poverty line in South Texas. Reading the assigned text for the lectures was like a checklist for me of why I was not supposed to make it. Growing up on the border was an experience unlike any other. Gloria Saldúa says, like all people, we perceive the version of reality that our culture communicates. Like others having or living in more than one culture, we get multiple, often opposing messages. The coming together of 2 self-consistent but habitually incomparable frames of reference causes un choque, a cultural collision. This is from Borderlands, La Frontera. My father expected us to be great in everything that we did. He was not a fan of translanguaging, like mixing English and Spanish. He thought it was lazy. We only spoke Spanish at home. He believed in hard work and always being busy. Respect was very important in my house. Our education was also very important. We were never absent from school, and we were never late. We obeyed our teachers, and whenever we got in trouble, he always sided with the teachers, of course. We always completed our homework, and when there was any extra time, we listed the multiplication facts until it was time to go to bed. We were also never able to spend the night at friends' houses, and I still don't understand why. I'm not a Teach for America alum, and I didn't come to teaching as a fellow or through a teacher prep program. 17 years ago, I walked into the school district building in Bryan, Texas, and told them that I wanted to teach. Do you have a college degree? Yes. Do you speak Spanish? Yes. And just like that, I was the 4th grade bilingual teacher with an emergency certificate. Davina was here earlier. She's like, that would have made my job a lot easier, this emergency certificate. And so this is Mrs. Linda Asbury. She was my very first principal. One on the left. I didn't attend the institute. I wasn't assigned an instructional coach or even a mentor. I built the classroom culture on what I knew, my parents' life lessons. I saw myself building relationships with my students and addressing them the way that my father had taught me, without the cursing or the chancla. We played football after school and after tutoring on Saturdays. I leaped into the classroom and had to survive in the same way my father launched me into the ocean when it was time for me to learn how to swim. Mrs. Asbury said I could teach however it is that I wanted, as long as the test results were strong at the end of the school year. I taught the best way I knew how, and at the end of the year, over 90% of my students passed the state tests in English and Spanish, including the writing test. This was definitely before Common Core. After that surprisingly successful first year, I moved to Cali and taught in North Long Beach. I rode this wave of confidence and experienced a whole new set of challenges. I taught Spanish to native English speakers and ESL to newcomers at an elementary school that served about 1,200 students. Imagine me surrounded by 40 little kindergarten students learning about lunes, martes, miércoles, and the weather in our morning calendar circle time. Again, I had to find my own resources and develop myself in order to best support my students. This was before blended learning also, so I couldn't bank on that either. When I went home for break, I returned with Spanish storybooks and old school teacher resources like this calendario and snacks from Mexico for incentives for them. I remember one morning in a 5th grade Spanish class, a boy was consistently not meeting classroom expectations. I addressed him, and at some point, I mentioned his mother. I may have said, "Is this how your mother taught you to behave?" That did not go well. All he heard was that this young teacher was talking about his mama, and that was his trigger. I learned that the words that I used are so important and must always be thoughtful, and that I must always be thoughtful about language. And what I say and what is heard is not always the same. I also hadn't invested in my relationship with this young man or with his family. I hadn't even met his mom at this point. Even now, I don't remember his name, but I'm guessing that he remembers mine. I also know that I didn't apologize. I learned how important it is to intentionally build relationships with students and families in order to support them in reaching the bar. After my 5th year teaching, I crossed the country to come to grad school and was hired as the 6th grade bilingual teacher at MS 223, just down the street from here on 145th Street and 3rd Avenue. It was clear that the transitional bilingual model of education that they had at the school had resulted in this group of students being ostracized. They were the Spanish kids, the poor kids, the immigrants. This stigma led to students even pretending that they didn't understand Spanish so that they wouldn't be teased even more. To make matters worse, the students in the bilingual classroom were the lowest performing academically in the school. I knew that I needed to do something about it. I let the principal know that I would return to revamp the 6th through 8th grade bilingual program. So I went to school, I studied second language acquisition and bilingual models of education. I changed the structure to implement an additive model where students built on their knowledge and skills that they were bringing with them in English and in Spanish. Within a couple of years, the students in our dual language program were outperforming students in general education classes. I strengthened relationships by hosting monthly family meetings and potlucks, and I changed the narrative about being bilingual in school and in their community. Just like my father expected me to respond in Spanish when he talked to me, I made sure students honored their home language of their families. Their participation in school-wide extracurricular activities increased, and we visited Cornell at the end of the school year. Nearly 100% of the students passed the algebra test and the Spanish Regents equivalency test as 8th graders. 2 of my students even went on to study at specialized high schools. Our innovative program received recognition from the Spanish consulate and was visited by the superintendent and the chancellor. The best part is that the dual language program continues to thrive now and serves as a model for other students and other schools. When I first came to KIPP in 2004, my bar for what was possible was raised. I respected KIPP teachers for their desire, discipline, and dedication. I collected the names of these KIPP powerhouses from across the country, how you would collect baseball cards. This new bar for excellence was attainable through the commitment to the work. I also found that the KIPP teachers I met had all been inspired by other giants. We remember, we appreciate. That year that I taught at KIPP LA, I had the privilege to come to the Bronx and watch Dave Levin teach his 5th grade math class. I remember the lesson was on subtracting mixed numbers with regrouping. He talked about whole number world and fraction world, and it was the first time I heard any teacher use The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe to hook kids into a math class. It changed the bar for me about excellent teaching. It raised it. There was rigor and high expectations and joy. The KIPPsters were unfazed by the 30 observers in the room. I didn't see military lines or robots. The binary thinking that it's not time for fun, it's time for learning, didn't exist here. I saw the and. Now, I also know that KIPP as an organization has not always held up its own bar. At my first KIPP School Summit, Jeff Duncan Andrade was critical of the program. He probably continues to be critical, and that's a good thing. He recognized KIPP for having good ideas and being on the right track. He also noted a white middle-class perspective that was used to set norms for students. He specifically said that KIPP's no excuses policies were not aligned with the community's beliefs. We need empathy and strong support as we hold students to high expectations. Duncan Andrade also recognized how many young teachers worked at KIPP and highlighted how important it is for teachers to stay in the profession and grow. Our bar for academics and character needs to be more radical and appreciative of our students and families' communities. Our students come with a wealth of experiences that must be seen. thinking from a deficit perspective about students as if they came with zero, and teachers as responsible for filling a vessel is harmful. You must understand students' experiences in how you communicate and how you create classroom culture. It starts with self and knowing who we are. I have to make sure that my bar stays high. There have been people throughout my life that have helped me. My bar raisers, who believe and model excellence as a sustained pursuit. They help me ensure that I don't get comfortable. I'm sure you all know Denny Swirsky. Right over there. He raises my bar around being nice and being humble. When we founded the school 7 years ago, and even now, love is at the center of the vision and in everything that we do at Washington Heights Middle School. Luis Nobriga, assistant principal at WHMS, and one of the zestiest guys I know, is my model for how to form transformative relationships with adults. Mike Martinez, instructional coach and math teacher, helps me set my bar for language and to have a critical lens of the world. Nancy Livingston is a Common Core beast. I strive to understand the standards to the level that she does. I'm grateful also for the team, the math team at KIPP Infinity, for their support, collaboration, and making sure that I keep my bar for academic achievement high. And Allison Willis Holly, who has been a cheerleader through this entire process and never let me come close to giving up. We remember, we appreciate, we believe our people are our greatest strength. I'll close with a story about two of my former students. This is Denelson. He's studying education at Buffalo State, and this is Angie. She'll be a sophomore at Cornell this semester. If the bar for what could be possible for them had not been raised, this story may have been totally different. My story may have been totally different. There are other children that have recently come from Honduras and other countries seeking asylum that are being detained at the border where I grew up, some separated from their families. Sandra Cisneros, an incredible writer who was awarded the National Medal of Arts by President Barack Obama, visited our school last year. She told the auditorium full of KIPPsters that we were experiencing dark times and we must not lose hope. There are messages that countries aren't sending over their best across the border, that we are bad hombres. Well, I love crushing stereotypes, and this bad hombre wants to continue to raise the bar for our KIPPsters and make sure that they know that we believe. Thank you.